back to the child, Jesus, Yeshua. And I want to crib from one of my favorite websites just to set up the next hour. It's from WorldNet Daily. Not since Paul of the New Testament was struck blind by the risen Jesus on the road to Damascus has a Jewish man's vision of the Messiah created such a buzz. But the story of Yitzhak Kaduri, a legendary rabbi who died at age 108, is about to take the world by storm. A brand new book and video titled The Rabbi Who Found Messiah tells the story of the venerated rabbi who, on the Day of Atonement in 2005, had a vision that until now has received scant attention by the global media. And here to talk about his new book and new documentary, The Rabbi Who Found Messiah, is Carl Gallups. Carl is a longtime senior pastor of Hickory Hammock Baptist Church. I had the pleasure of meeting Carl at the Baptist Church down in Florida several years ago. He's the author of the bestseller Magic Man in the Sky. Additionally, he's a conference leader, evangelist, a Christian media icon. He's one of the founders of video teaching material to the world-famous P.P. Simmons YouTube Ministry and Biblical Apologetics Channel. He's a graduate of Florida State University and the New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary, and as I say, his latest book, The Rabbi Who Found Messiah. Carl Gallups, how are you? Welcome.
Richard, it's so good to be with you. Yes, I remember when we were together in Florida, and I bet you're jealous of me right now because we have some pretty nice winter weather here as opposed to you guys in Toronto.
Well, I kind of like the snow for about 2 weeks, and then it starts to get old real fast.
Yeah, I lived in Michigan the first 10 years of my life, so I know exactly what you're talking about. Of course, as a kid, we loved the snow, every chance we could get it. I lived on a lake, so we got to do ice skating as well.
And you were in law enforcement as well before you came to the ministry. Is that correct?
Yes, I was. I spent right at 10, maybe a little more than 10. It's been so long ago, I can't remember, 10 or 11 years in Florida law enforcement, 7 or 8 of those years as deputy sheriff in 2 different sheriff's offices in Florida. So, sure did.
Let's talk about Rabbi Kaduri. Now, 108 years old. Oh, it's actually, that's sort of questionable. Some say he may have been somewhere between 110 and 118. Hard to believe. But give us some insights into who Rabbi Yitzhak Kaduri was. Yeah,
well, you're right. When he died in 2006, most claims have him set at 108, but it's anywhere between 106 to 116. I mean, the guy was an elderly gentleman, born in the late 1800s. We don't know exactly when, obviously. His life spanned, the last of the 1800s, all of the 1900s, and right on into the 2000s. So amazing fellow. When he died, Richard, over 300,000 people came to his funeral. They had to shut the city streets of Jerusalem down for almost 2 days. Ben Gurion International Airport was cram-packed with airplanes flying in from all over Europe. Snippets of his funeral were carried on Fox News. I mean, I actually remember seeing that and marveling at what a beloved man this was. Millions of people around the world followed his ministry. He was living in the land. He was born in Iraq, but he was living in the land of Israel as a young man with his young family long before it was Israel. It was called Palestine back then. And so anyway, really, he's the most venerated, the most famous, the most beloved rabbi, many people would agree, in modern Israel's history. And that's what makes this story so shocking, and it's still unfolding. Some elements of it are. And it's what makes it so shocking is this deeply rabbinical Jew steeped in Kabbalism, Kabbalah as well. It just, and revered by millions of Orthodox Jews around the world. And then he makes some, purportedly made some astounding proclamations just before his death and in a note after his death.
And we'll discuss that throughout the hour.
Yeah.
But just a few more moments spending on the man, the Rabbi Kaduri. There were a number of prophecies that we'll discuss attributed to him, and healings, as I understand.
Mm-hmm.
What can you tell us about these seemingly miraculous healings that are attributed to the rabbi?
Well, you used the word properly, attributed. Of course, we can only go by what people have said, but throughout the years, he is reported to have been the giver of blessings, which resulted in healings. Now, here's the thing: his ministry, he was a very quiet and humble gentleman, and was not loud, was not forthcoming at all. But just over the years, he gained this reputation for being a man of wisdom, a man of brilliance, a man with a photographic memory, a man who knew the scriptures back and forward, and all of the rabbinical writings and teachings and the oral traditions and the written traditions. And so people flocked to his doors for wisdom and for words of blessing and prayers of healing. And down through the years, many, many people, Richard, as you said, gave testimony that they asked for certain healings and they came true. They came to pass. They asked for certain blessings. On top of healings, some people proclaimed that they went to him with financial problems and said, please bless me with this. Pray for me. And their financial problems would eventually disappear, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a long line. And, with a man that old and with a ministry that long, you never know what's actually verifiable or not, but the stories are out there. The anecdotal accounts are there, by the scores and scores and scores, and so that's a part of his legacy, to be sure.
And this vision that the rabbi had of the Messiah that created such, to say a buzz is to put it mildly.
Yeah.
Take us back to that momentous occasion and this vision, which I understand he went into a trance, and when he came out of the trance, he announced to those gathered around him what he had seen. Tell us about what happened that day.
Yes. Well, it's amazing. It's complex. I'm going to make this as simple as possible, but all the way back when he was a child, 13 to 16 years old, he had a pronouncement over him that he would live to, quote, see the Messiah. Then, when he was about 90 years old, and after Israel was a nation, another famous rabbi pronounced another prophecy over him that he would live to see the Messiah and actually would personally see and meet the Messiah. Well, in 2003, I guess Kaduri would have been, who knows, 104, 105, 106 years old. He made his first pronouncement that he had a vision of Messiah. People were attracted to that. They were astounded by that, and they began to question him. He let out a few details here and there of various kind of cryptic descriptions of the Messiah who was to come. But as you just referenced, the most astounding thing was in 2005, Richard, just before his Yom Kippur service in October, and it is reported by some sources at his Yom Kippur service again, he announced to his followers, some of his closest followers, that he had this vision, this revelation that Messiah has actually come to him. Now, in that Yom Kippur service, it is heavily reported, and I've got this documented in my book and resourced, that he did go into a trance-like state that lasted some 45 minutes. When he came out of it, he began to once again emphasize that he had met the Messiah, that he knew the Messiah, he knew the name of the Messiah, and he had told some followers, apparently sometime before and at this meeting, according to some, that he had written the name of the real Messiah in a note, and that this note was to be sealed and opened only a year after his death. And the second astounding thing that he said was that he also had been given the revelation that Messiah would not come until Ariel Sharon had died. Now, Richard, you know that when he made that pronouncement in 2005, Ariel Sharon was the 11th Prime Minister of Israel and was still Prime Minister at the time. Highly controversial figure. Some hated him and some adored him. Some even proclaimed him to perhaps be one of the Jewish messiahs that was being expected. So this guy was quite a political figure, and to say that this man had to die before Messiah would come was another astounding proclamation or revelation from this venerated Rabbi, Yitzhak Kaduri. So those things were said right around October. And the reason I say, right around is because some reports have him saying these things before that Yom Kippur service, and other reports have him saying it again there at that Yom Kippur service in front of those witnesses. So right in October is when he made these astounding pronouncements.
Carl, just going to jump in here as the music percolates. We'll pick it up on the other side. Carl Gallups, the author of a book that has created quite a storm, The Rabbi Who Found Messiah, also a brand new documentary. We'll tell you how to get both. When the Conspiracy Show continues, don't go away. All right, Carl Gallups is with us, and we're discussing the Rabbi Who Found Messiah, Rabbi Yitzhak Kaduri. Before his death, Kaduri had said that he expected the Jewish Messiah to arrive soon and that he had met him a year earlier. And it's been alleged that he left a handwritten note to his followers that were reportedly instructed to only open the note after Rabbi Kaduri had been dead for 1 year. Now, before we get to the contents of that note, Carl, how did you find out about this story? I mean, it was reported, I think, briefly by only 2 news outlets in Israel, and then sort of complete silence, from what I understand. How did you pick up on it?
Yeah, well, thank you for asking, and I'm excited to tell you how I found out about it. But first, let me just say, congratulations on that talent in your home, man. You're very blessed.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. Well, Richard, and by the way, thank you for having me on your show tonight. Yes, let me tell you how I became interested in this, and then let me tell you out of that how I knew about the story, and then how the book and the movie came about. In 2007, that was a year after Kaduri's death. Kaduri died January 28th, I think, or 24th, 28th, 2006. A year later, around April 2007, Israel Today really is the one credited with running the biggest breaking story on it. It was, I think it was a front page magazine article of their magazine, published in many different languages. But of course, it was also not only in their print edition, but on the website, a big article about this note. And following them was the Hebrew-only media source called News First Class. I think it's now it went by the initials NFC. I think now it's called News One out of Israel, Hebrew only. But News First Class and Israel Today, 2 major Israeli sources coming right out of Jerusalem, they reported on this note that was revealed because, Richard, the note was published on Kaduri's website. Not on some conspiracy theory website, not on some nebulous website, not on some nefarious website, not on some Christian website, but on his website, kaduri.net. And Israel Today reported on the note, and so did News First Class. Now, the note, well, let me get back to answering your question. So when that report came out, sometime later, I guess it was maybe a year after that, it was brought to my attention as I had just founded the P.P. Simmons News and Ministry Network on the Internet, and it was becoming insanely popular, and somebody sent me a clip of that and said, you got to check this out. Look at this rabbi. Well, when I went to the site, Richard, I remembered when he died, because as I said, I remembered Fox News doing some snippets and reports on it, and mainstream media. I'm positive it was Fox. It might not have been, but it was mainstream, so I remembered the guy. Didn't know much about him, but so I read the Israel Today report, and I read the reports about News First Class, because I can't read Hebrew fluently, but I read reports about it, printed in English, and I was just overwhelmed by this story of this rabbi, this Orthodox Jewish rabbi coming from the rabbinical mode of Judaism, proclaiming that he had met the Messiah. And so Israel Today ran the story. I saw it. I took their story and journalistically put it in video format, gave them all the credit for it, of course, and took the story and just made a video about it and put it on P.P. Simmons News, just reporting this news. Well, the video went viral, Richard. It just went crazy, went all over the world, and, millions of views between not only the video on our site, but the video was pulled down and put all over Facebook and YouTube, et cetera. Well, so we just followed it, and of course, it said Ariel Sharon had to die first. Well, Ariel Sharon, right after Yitzhak Kaduri made that pronouncement in 2005, Ariel Sharon went into a coma. He had a stroke and went into a coma. And Richard, as you know,
yes,
Ariel Sharon's still alive.
8 years later, languishing in a coma. Yes.
Yeah, 7 years later. In fact, this year, the 7th year, in January, Fox News reported, and this is in my book, Resource, that the brainwave activity was beginning to kind of come forefront again, and it looked like he might even be waking up. And in September of this year, there was some surgery done on Ariel Sharon on his stomach, and they inserted a feeding tube as well. So, I mean, the man is not only living, but they're doing surgery on him and doing brainwave tests 7 years later. So anyway, to answer your question, so in 2007, I saw this, made the video, got interested in it, been following the story along for some years, just keeping track of Ariel Sharon, and then watching the outrage of the Jewish community as they tried to deny it and cover it up, and then watching the media basically shut the story down. Well, early this year, I guess January, maybe even December of last year, I was contacted by my publishers. And as you said when you introduced me, I had already written a book with W&D Books called The Magic Man in the Sky. And Joseph Farah, the president of the company, had been on the Internet. He was fascinated by this story as well. Unbeknownst to me, he had been studying up on it. And he called me up and said, Carl, he said, you know about this Yitzhak Kaduri guy? I said, oh, yeah. I said, I did a video on it. And he said, yeah. He laughed. He said, I know. He said, that's why I'm calling you. He says, because every place I went to read about this, he said, over and over, I kept bumping into your video. And he said, I recognized your voice. And he said, I know this guy from somewhere. He said, then it dawned on me, well, that's Carl Gallups. He said, this guy writes for us. And he said, I'm telling you, Carl, nobody has written a book about this. And Ariel Sharon is still living. And, they're doing brainwave tests on him. And this guy made this amazing pronouncement. And this story is still unfolding. And there's not a book out there anywhere in the world on it. He said, you need to write a book on it. He said, you know about this story. You made the video. You need to write a book. And he said, if we like your manuscript, he said, I'll commit the resources and we'll get a really good producer and we'll make a documentary movie about it. So I said, okay, let's do it. And so I spent many months researching and compiling things together, putting the book together, sending the manuscript. They loved the manuscript, and I praise God for that. And they did. They made a documentary movie that is just first class. People that have watched it have commented that it needs to be on the History Channel. I mean, you're getting a lot of those comments on the Internet. So George Escobar, award-winning film producer, W&D Films, produced the movie. So the book and the movie's out there, The Rabbi Who Found Messiah. So that's kind of my journey with it. I guess I made the first, maybe, I'm just saying this, I could be corrected, but I think I made the first video about it. As I said, Israel Today and News First Class ran the first stories on it. But then I made the video, and it went crazy. And now I've written the book, and as of now, it's the first and only book on the topic.
And so we must now get to the note in question, which, as you explained, was sealed to be opened posthumously 1 year after the death of Rabbi Kaduri. And from what I understand, you'll walk us through this, but I guess the revelation came in the form of an acronym, did it not?
Yes, it did. It was coded, which would not be unusual for Rabbi Kaduri because, again, he was a student of Kabbalah. And, we can talk about Kabbalah all you want. I'm certainly not legitimizing it. Most Christians would say that Kabbalah, in its deepest sense, is a mystical, almost magical, some would even say with demonic connections, numerology and looking for hidden messages and hidden codes to the point of almost making a Ouija board out of the scriptures. And so there are a lot of people who really freak out when you talk about somebody being involved in Kabbalah. But one of the attributes of Kabbalah is to kind of play with words and phrases and to make acronyms. But listen, I just want to remind your listeners that are Bible students that not to get too freaked out about leaving a coded message because, by the way, Psalm 119, the longest chapter in the entire Bible, is a Hebrew coded acronym. Psalm 119, each section begins with the first Hebrew letter of the alphabet and then with each successive letter. A lot of people, Bible students, know that. In fact, there are quite a few psalms that do that kind of play around with this acronym coding of the Hebrew alphabet. So,
doesn't it say also, I think it's in Kings, it is a godly matter to conceal a thing and a manly matter to search out a thing, or something to that? I'm paraphrasing horribly.
Well, yes, and not only that, Richard, and you brilliantly stated that really is a biblical thing, but when you get into the New Testament, you hear the Apostle Paul, who, by the way, was a rabbinical Jew, a rabbi of himself, a Pharisee, a teacher of the law. Paul continually speaks, does he not, Richard, of mysteries and revealing mysteries and the mysteries that are to be revealed? John, the Revelator, in the book of Revelation, speaks of the number of his name, talking about the Antichrist. Many believe that that's a reference to the Hebrew gematria, the numbering of the Hebrew letters and figuring out a person's attributes by the numbering of their name. John says that. The book of Acts talks about the Apostle Paul distributing handkerchiefs, to people, the handkerchiefs that he had touched, and people were healed by receiving these gifts from the Apostle Paul. So, I know that freaks out modern Christian, Western Christian readers, but you got to remember, these guys were Jews, Paul and John, and they were rabbinical Jews. And this Kabbalah has been around for a long time, and it's steeped in their hearts and minds the mysteries of God and how God reveals himself sometimes step by step in mysterious ways. So, yes, the note was left, back to your original question, in a coded format. And here is my theory. Now, I can't prove this, Richard, but my theory is the note, when it was opened, I think was placed on his website by his webmaster or somebody. I mean, you've got a website. Not just anybody has access to that. I mean, somebody wanting to play a trick on you would have a hard time throwing up a fake note on your website. Number one, getting in there and doing it. Number two, it wouldn't stay there very long before you or somebody would find it and pull it down. But yet this note was there on his website, and guess what? A year after he died, just like he said. And so here's a note, and I'm going to tell your listeners what it said in English, because of course he wrote it in Hebrew. And it's just a phrase that sounds like it would have come from the Old Testament. It sounds like something a Jew would say, a Hebrew would say. But yet the note itself contained the formula for the code for interpreting it. And here's what the note said, Richard. It said, and I'm going to say it in English, but it was written in Hebrew, and the note was on the website. Israel Today reported it. News First Class reported it. Here's what it said. By the way, his website is kaduri.net. But the note said, concerning the letter abbreviation of his name, comma. Now, I want to stop and say, his name, his who, his name. Well, the Messiah, because that's what he said. He said, I'm going to leave the name of the real Messiah. So when he says concerning the letter abbreviation of his name, he's meaning the Messiah. So he says, concerning the letter abbreviation of his name, comma, he shall lift his people and prove that the word and the law are valid. Well, that certainly sounds like something the Messiah would do. I hear the music, so on the other side, do you want me to give the revelation of what it meant?
You are a veteran broadcaster.
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
All right, we'll do exactly that, Carl. Carl Gallups is with us, the author of The Rabbi Who Found Messiah. You're listening to The Conspiracy Show. Stay with us. Carl Gallups stays with us as we discuss his book, and a documentary, which created quite a storm. And for obvious reasons, as we'll get into, The Rabbi Who Found Messiah. So back to this cryptic note that he left. It was sealed to be opened posthumously. It was revealed on his website, Rabbi Kaduri's website, a year after he passed. And you talked about the translation. I've heard something somewhat similar. Maybe the meaning is the same. He will raise the people and confirm that his word and law are standing.
Yes.
That sort of jives with what you were saying.
Yeah, well, that's right. I mean, when you translate from Hebrew to English, there are variations in how you could translate it, but most of the translations have it saying, concerning the letter abbreviation of his name, comma, he will raise his people and prove that the law and the word and the law are valid. Okay, now, that's certainly, now the note is talking about the Messiah, and he promised he would reveal the name of the Messiah. Well, that note at its surface reading, does not reveal the name.
No.
But it reveals attributes of the Messiah. He shall lift his people. He will prove that the word and the law are valid. Okay, those are messianic descriptions. But watch this. The first part of that sentence says what? Concerning the letter abbreviation of his name, comma. Well, many people saw that that was the way that the note was supposed to be decoded. And I'm going to tell you what it said, then I'm going to give you my theory on why the note disappeared from the website and why now the Kaduri family and some of the closest inside followers are proclaiming that the whole thing is a hoax and a lie. And, of course, they don't like my book, but all my book does is just journalistically report the facts. It's not preachy. I don't jump up and down and proclaim that this is that, but I do report it in great detail. And Orthodox Jews are not real happy with it because I think they thought the story was shut down. And I'll give you my theory of what happened, of what probably happened to cause this. But anyway, so they looked at the note, and it says, concerning the letter abbreviation of his name. Well, they realized, oh, my gosh, this note is encoded. It has a code, and the letter abbreviation of his name. So the rest of the note must be an acronym, kind of like Psalm 119. So they took the next words, he shall lift his people and prove that the word and law are valid. Now, those are a bunch of words in English, but in Hebrew, that sentence, that thought is represented by 6 Hebrew words. And when you take the first letter of each of those remaining 6 Hebrew words, Richard,
yes,
shockingly, the word that is revealed is Yehoshua, or the shortened version of that is Yeshua, Yehoshua. And the Romanized Greek version is Iesus, and from Romanized Greek to English is Jesus. So,
yes.
So this rabbinical, this revered, venerated rabbi of Kabbalistic tradition, Orthodox rabbinical Judaism, the most revered rabbi in modern Israel's history, perhaps in the world during his day. 300,000 people came to his funeral. He leaves a note that, when decoded, says the real name of the real Messiah is Jesus. That shook the Jewish Orthodox world to its foundations.
Understandably.
Yes.
And one has to appreciate the sensitivity here.
Oh, yes. And I've tried to be very sensitive in handling this. In fact, I've been very gracious to the Kaduri family, not only in the book but in the movie. And we just report the facts, and we document our sources clearly and carefully. But the bottom line is that would be tantamount to Billy Graham, who's, bless his soul, is, he's on his deathbed, apparently, according to some of his own people here in the recent headline news just in the past few days. Read on Drudge just the other day that his own family is saying that he's passing very quickly. But that would be like if Billy Graham passed and left a note. And a year later we opened it and it said, look, the real Messiah, I know who it is. The real Messiah is Muhammad. I mean that would shake the Christian world to its foundations. Well, that's the very effect that this note from this Billy Graham of Judaism had. Now, let me give you my theory on what probably happened with all of this.
We'll do that when we come back, Carl.
Okay.
Carl Gallups is with us, the rabbi who found Messiah, right here on The Conspiracy Show. Don't you dare go away. All right, Carl Gallups stays with us as we discuss the rabbi who found Messiah. And again, we understand, obviously, tremendous sensitivity must be paid here. The analogy that you made, Carl, I think is quite brilliant, actually. Imagine if, for Christians, Billy Graham, on his deathbed, were to leave a note to be opened posthumously, and when it was revealed, Billy Graham were to pronounce that the Messiah is Muhammad. That's the sort of, earth-shattering impact this must have for the Jewish community when one of their most revered rabbis seals a note that reveals the name of the Messiah to be Yeshua, or Jesus Christ. I mean, I can't even imagine what that must be like for them. So the the son of Rabbi Kaduri claims that this was a forgery. This note is a hoax. It's not the real deal. How can we be certain that he's not right?
Yeah. Well, there's a possibility that he is right, and I deal with that possibility in my book. As I said, I think my book is written very fairly, very journalistically, and with all deference to the Kaduri family. Listen, I have no desire to harm the legacy of this man. I mean, within his faith, theater of faith, he was quite a remarkable man, and has an amazing legacy. But listen, Kaduri himself is the one who said he saw Messiah. He himself is the one who said, I know his name. I mean, many witnesses know this. In my book and in the movie, we actually have film footage of students, older men. I'm not talking about 20-year-old students. I'm talking about 50, 60-year-old men of his rabbinical training school who are on film testifying that Kaduri not only spoke of this vision of Messiah in his rabbinical training school, but he actually spoke of Yehoshua as being Messiah in his school, and a couple of his students actually gave their lives to Yehoshua as Messiah, as Lord, as a result of Kaduri's teaching. Now, Kaduri wasn't running an evangelistic camp, and he wasn't giving invitations like we would think of in Western Christianity, but for his son David to just flat out deny. In fact, we have David Kaduri on film saying, "My father never even spoke of Messiah at all." Well, now that's not accurate. Richard, that's not the truth. I mean, Israeli media printed Kaduri's statements about Messiah and his visions of Messiah. And again, we have his own students on film. So anyway, here's what I think happened, Richard. Now, I can't prove this, but this, being an ex-cop and an investigator, this makes investigative sense to me. First of all, the possibilities are that David Kaduri's right. It is a big hoax, but you have to explain a couple of things. First, you have to say, well, if it's a hoax, who in the world had access? And why, after all these years later, do you not have any clue as to who gained access to the website and put it up there? Number two, why would anybody want to do that? I mean, within the Jewish world, who would want to do that? And if it was within the, some Christian world that was trying to do this, well, and 7 years later, why haven't we discovered anything about that? Well, we haven't. Secondly, we know he was going to leave a note because he said that publicly, so where's the real note? I mean, if this one's a fake, where's the real one, and why doesn't anybody talk about that?
Listen, let me ask you here, just jump in here for a second, and that is that the note that was revealed on the website, was this a scan of the actual handwritten note?
Yes. I mean that's what's being reported, and that's what it surely looks like. And as a matter of fact, Israel Today, when I contacted the folks at Israel Today, they told me, said, "Look, Carl, we stand by our story. We investigated this. We talked to his followers. We scanned the note. We took the note to David Kaduri. David Kaduri drug out some of his father's handwriting, trying to convince us that this was not his father's handwriting." And he said, of course, he drug out handwriting from 70 or 80 years back. I mean, the man was 108 years old. So, and they said, see, this doesn't match. And, well, of course, a 30-year-old handwriting wouldn't match somebody that's 108. But anyway, so yes, Richard, it's reported to be an actual scan of his own handwriting. So, and which came, by the way, let me be redundant, from his own website. Now, here's what I think happened. I think that they opened the note, and I think that is his own followers and people with access to his website, his webmaster, whoever, I think they put the note up on the website because it was so astounding. Everybody, the whole Jewish world was waiting to hear from this rabbi like he had always given them, prophecies and tantalizing tidbits of the future. And so they wanted to attract people to the website, and they were announcing, here's the note, and it was there. But it was just there in those words, those cryptic words, but I think somebody, once they figured out, oh my gosh, he's left an acronym, and once they saw it, I think, Richard, it freaked them out. And I think immediately they pulled it down and started doing damage control. To me, that's what it appears like. Now, I could be wrong, and I deal with all of these possibilities in my book, but to me, as a former cop and just somebody with an analytical mind, and just dealing with all the facts and asking the questions, well, if this isn't the note, where is the note? And if it is a hoax, then who did it? And why have you not investigated it? And why have you not come up with a solution or an alternative answer? I mean, their only response was, once they figured out that the note said that the name of the Messiah is Jesus, once they figured that out, their response was, take it off the website and claim that it's a hoax. Well, but until they figured out that that's what it said, it was on the website, and nobody was claiming it was a hoax. Do you see my reasoning, Richard?
I do. Who was responsible for actually, I guess, decoding the acronym? Do we have a name?
You know, I don't. And it's so hard to find out who decoded it, who put the note on the website, who took it down, because the media just shut it down. They just shut it down. Again, Israel Today was the first one who jumped all over it and did some pretty deep investigation, but even they were kind of locked out as to getting details as to who actually, put it there, who decoded it. But the thing is, anybody who knows Hebrew can decode it easily if you see the Hebrew words. And in fact, in my book, I have it illustrated with the words circled, and so that anybody that can, and of course it's translated into English, but anybody who can read Hebrew can double check what's in the book. I mean, you can see it.
And there's no other way. I'm no cipher. There's no other way of decoding this to come up with a different acronym. There's only one answer.
As far as I can see, I mean, I'm not going to say there's no other way, but no one else has proffered another way, Richard, and I can't see another way. When you take the letter abbreviation of each of those 6 words remaining after the instructions are given, it is Yehoshua. Now, let me say this for you and your listeners, and this is one of the arguments of the Orthodox Jews. Well, Yehoshua, translated directly to English, is nothing more than just Joshua. And there are millions of Joshuas, even in Jesus' day. There were millions of Yeshuas in Jesus' day. Not millions, I'm sorry, I'm exaggerating, but a lot. It was a very common name.
Sure.
Just like Joshua or John is now.
Yeah, who's to say that the Jewish Messiah, it could also be named Joshua and is not the same Yeshua that we consider our Savior as Christians?
Yes, and let me address that. I address that in the book, and that is a possibility, and that's one of the arguments that the Orthodox Jews are making who can't really explain away the note. They're saying, well, okay, if the note is his, all it says is the Messiah is Joshua, and that could be anyone. Well, my answer to that is, number one, you're correct, it could be, because it doesn't say Jesus the Christ or Jesus of Nazareth. But there's 2 huge stumbling blocks that stand in the way, and that is his own students are on film saying that he taught Yehoshua, Jesus of the New Testament, was the Christ in his seminary, and several students gave their lives to Jesus as the Christ because of it, number one. Number 2, he said he was going to leave the name of the real Messiah. Well, Richard, there's only one faith system in all the world who holds up as Messiah a person that has the name Yehoshua, and that is the New Testament revelation of Jesus Christ of Nazareth as Messiah. So I know the argument can be made, well, he didn't really say who it was. He just said Yehoshua. Well, I know, but his declaration was, I'm going to tell you who Messiah is. And as I said, there's only one faith system. And as I said, students from his own seminary, before he passed, they're on film saying, look, he was teaching this in his seminary. This is no new revelation to us. And in fact, one guy is on there saying, and after he taught this, he said, I continued to search the Old Testament scriptures and determined that Jesus was the Christ. But Richard, this shouldn't surprise us. This is what happened 2,000 years ago. This is what we're celebrating right here at Christmas time, that the Jews were looking for a Jewish Messiah. And when God put on flesh, he put on Jewish flesh. And he came under the name, according to the announcement of the angel, Yehoshua, which means God is our salvation, or God saves. And he was rejected by his own people, Richard. But after the resurrection, he was preached unto his own people, and thousands of Jews came to Yehoshua as Christ and Messiah, including Pharisees and priests, the book of Acts tells us, and including a rabbi who had some Kabbalah in him by the name of Paul, who not only had a vision, a revelation of Messiah, but it was revealed to him that Yehoshua was the Christ, and he spent the rest of his life declaring Yehoshua was the Christ, but he was eventually killed for it, and he was imprisoned for it all of his life. He was beaten for it by his own people. So this Jewish rejection of Yehoshua, I deal with it in my book heavily, and I deal with it in the film. In fact, Messianic Rabbi Jonathan Cahn, as you know, the New York Times #1 bestseller, The Harbinger, he's in the movie with me, and he explains this Jewish mindset. So the reaction of the Jews to the book and to the movie and to this revelation and to this story that the Jewish media shut down, in fact, the whole world mainstream media shut down, it shouldn't surprise us. I mean, this has been the reaction to the name of Jesus for 2,000 years, Richard.
Well, Carl, I wish we had more time, and perhaps we'll have you back on at some point to discuss a little bit further, particularly the prophecy that revolves around the second coming and its connection to the death of Ariel Sharon, which has obviously not happened yet, as he continues to linger in a coma. In the meantime, The Rabbi Who Found Messiah, the documentary and the book, both available from WorldNet Daily.
Yes, absolutely. You can get it at Amazon.com, bookstores all over, the United States, I'm sure, in Canada as well, and at WND Bookstore, at the Superstore, WorldNet Daily. In fact, a direct link to get the book and the movie is RabbiWhoFoundMessiah.com, or just get it at Amazon.
Carl Gallups, appreciate your time tonight. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you, Richard. It's an honor to be with you. God bless you.
God bless you. All right. RichardSyrett.com.